Hey guys, this here is the last part of a three-parter involving a manipulative friend. Part 1 was done by RPG Tales, and Part 2 was done by Artificial DM. I will leave a link to their videos in the description and in the YouTube card at the top right, so make sure that you check out the other parts so that you actually have context on this, because this is the ending of it all. But without further ado, let's get into it. So the last session ended, and the party had eventually arrived at the capital of the country, and after some searching, the party decided that they had wanted to buy some supplies from the shop. Before this, a new member had been added to the party. They were Victor Smith, a human wizard. The party wanted to buy weapons and other supplies and were planning to head over to a shop. The issue was, the shop had closed because it was in the middle of the night, which was a very simple issue. Just go to sleep and that would solve the problem. Just a simple 2-minute description about going to a tavern, sleeping, and then waking up. But instead of doing this, Ira and Eris somehow convince the entire party to rob the shop. Before this session, though, I didn't know exactly what to have in the shop, so I decided to consult the people playing the game to see what they would want, because I didn't exactly know how to set the shops up. I know how to do them now, and as such, fill them with the proper items. So, most of the people had asked for very mainstream kind of items, like an elven cloak, which, at least to me, it is a common item. Our rogue had thought it would help her, and most of the people wanted fairly mundane things, such as battle axes, bows, or potions, nothing particularly crazy. But not Aaron. He asked for an elemental blade at first, and I was on edge about it, thinking it would be too powerful. So he asked for what I thought would be a simpler sword, called the Artifice Sword. And this was a homebrew weapon, not from the PHP or anything, and I allowed homebrew anyways, because it made the game more fun and added potentially cooler mobs or items. However, here is the description of the Artifice Sword. This blade is of godlike craftsmanship, made from a supernaturally lightweight material, and specializes in parrying and deflecting blows. While wielding this longsword, you can add your dexterity modifier to attack and damage rolls instead of your strength. When you hit with this longsword, you deal an additional 1d8 damage, or a 1d10 if you are wielding it in both hands. The damage from this weapon is not magical. If you are wielding this sword and not benefiting from a shield, add a +2 bonus to your AC. So yes, his tactic on this was an old haggling trick. Shoot higher than you actually want. So he originally wanted the elemental sword, that I thought was too powerful, and then asked for this sword that I thought wouldn't be so bad. I thought I had read the item description, but I can't remember, which is super weird to me. So now his AC had gone from 17 to 19, which is great. Makes for great balancing when it comes to fighting monsters. Now he asked me for a second item, a pair of gloves that would allow him to store 2 swords inside the glove, like a pocket dimension, where he can take them out and have it float around him or wield it. If it floats around him, it'll add a +1 bonus to his AC, making Ira's AC a 19 or 20. Which was oh so very great. I love it so much. So the party decided to all break into the shop, instead of just quickly going to sleep. Which I will reiterate is the reason Ira convinced the party to rob the place, because it was closed, and just steal all the items they wanted from the shop. So it was a pretty lame thing that he did. He tricked me into giving him overpowered items, and then stole them. They all fled the town after it, fearing that the Crown Guard would potentially come and find them and arrest the whole party. And now for a bonus story. This story doesn't have much to do about the character or the story that we have been talking about, but more so about the person himself who plays Ira, Aaron. So I was hosting a session, and it was close to the end of the school year. So Aaron and the person playing Victor were going off to college soon. This was going to be the last session before the school year ended, so they took it as something special, as it was their last session. So about midway through the session, a friend outside of the campaign came over, and I was unaware that she was coming over. But I took it as no big deal. She could just sit in and watch or something. She really wasn't too interested in D&D. So I had her play the NPC I had, Piper. We sat her near Aaron at the table, so that he could do a brief run-over of the rules. And we then continued to play. Now, I have had issues with my players talking during my sessions. It's something I try to take control over, and eventually do. But they usually get sidetracked anyways. So this session eventually got sidetracked as it usually did. And the girl who came in later was cracking jokes about Aaron, as it's just a thing for us to just poke fun at. And I'm fine with the jokes. It's a light session, and it's all fine. The entire time that the girl was here, and eventually when she left, Aaron was sulking, as we were making jokes. And any time that I was talking to another player about something, or describing something, he would be on his phone, or talking with Victor. Eventually he gave a little speech about how this was going to be his last session, because he was going to college, and that he actually wanted to focus on the session, and not just screw around and make jokes. Later on, in our chat, Aaron's friend was dissing my friend about how she was being rude, and just distracting the whole session the whole time. And he kept going on how he hated the girl, and how rude she was for making jokes about Aaron, and how she kept people from playing the game. Honestly, they were able to play the game. It would have been about 10 to 20 minutes of gameplay, and then only a couple of minutes of jokes. It wasn't like they didn't play at all. They were all able to still play the game, so the two were all very frustrated about her distracting everyone. However, this wasn't the last session we ever had. We continued to have frequent sessions throughout the summer. So that's cool, being a hypocrite. Eventually, when it came to the end of summer, more than half the party were going into their junior year in high school, including myself. And this is the most stressful year, as it counts the most for college. So I was going to have a hiatus point for the session, so that we could focus on school. And at the end of the session, I was revealing a mission to one of the players right next to me, from a very important NPC. And at the same time, Aaron and Victor were talking to each other. They were the only ones talking over me. Everyone else was focused on what I was saying, because it was important. So I decided to stick it to him and just entirely ignore him. I gave the exposition to the player, and then ended the session. If he wasn't going to listen, he wasn't going to get valuable information. So that was just his problem at that time. Well guys, that's the end of part 3. As I said at the beginning of the video, part 1 and part 2 were done by RPG Tales and Artificial DM respectively. Their parts will be linked in the description and in the YouTube cards. So, I hope you enjoyed this trilogy, and as always, thanks for watching, and have a good one.